So, whatever your views on an Indigenous voice, today is a monumental day. It's the day laws passed to hold the referendum, with the support of the Coalition, by the way, and of course when the Prime Minister announced the final wording of the voice proposition. Anthony Albanese was very emotional.
To be very clear, because I was asked this question this morning, are there any circumstances in which this will not be put to a vote? The answer to that is no. Because to not put this to a vote to not put this to a vote is to concede defeat. You only win when you run on the field and engage. And let me tell you, my government is engaged. We're all in.
Look, it might be hard for all kinds of reasons, but it's best to keep emotion out of these things, I reckon. The left always overdo the emotion over the reason. Still, the PM is right to claim this is an historic moment on the road to reconciliation.
This is a modest request. I say to Australia, don't miss it. Don't miss it. This is about the heart, but it's also about the head. If you think things have been working up to now, look at the Closing the Gap issue. If you want to look at the best programs for Indigenous Australians that have been successful, they have all been characterised by having that sense of ownership. They're the things that have worked.
Before we get to other responses, let's look at the detail. Here's what will be asked. Do we approve of an alteration to the Constitution to recognise First Peoples by establishing an Indigenous voice? What about the actual clauses to go into the Constitution that this referendum would deliver? Well, they haven't changed much from what's been around for a year. The first point mandates a voice through the Constitution. The second clause importantly says the voice may make representations. That's all. It's advisory. And importantly, that advice can still go to Parliament and the Executive, to government, on matters relating to Indigenous people. And in the third clause, a significant change. The Parliament, subject to the Constitution, will make laws with respect to matters relating to the voice. That phrase, matters relating, is important because constitutional law experts, they say that this broadens the supremacy of the Parliament. It means, say, if there were legal challenges about whether government had properly considered advice from the voice, well, this means that Parliament can clarify any of that. Parliament can make all the rules about not just how the voice is run, but how its advice is handled. But this won't assuage all the opponents.
Given that there is reference to the opportunity for the voice to make representations to the executive, suggests that they have a power that basically is a power stronger than a cabinet minister. And there is no guarantee, they cannot guarantee that they will absolutely not be challenged in the High Court. There is no guarantee, there is no suggestion of any guarantee, and I would suggest this is now walking on very dangerous ground.
Look, you'll hear a lot of this sort of stuff, but the voice has no power. It's advisory only. Its only power will come from the value of its arguments. And with any law and any constitutional change, of course there's potential for people to make legal challenges. That's the fundamental right of everyone in a democracy under the rule of law. What matters is whether such challenges are likely to succeed or whether the constitutional changes make the power structures clear. And these clauses, according to most of the experts, make all this clear and safe. The Parliament can deal with any problems should they arise. The legal scare campaign will continue, but it is a furphy. The bigger question is whether a voice can actually help deliver practical changes that improve outcomes for Indigenous people and therefore make us a better country.
This is about the right to be consulted on laws and policies that are made about our communities, to be heard on laws and policies about our lives.
In its simplicity, it is giving Indigenous people who have been ignored and treated poorly for far too long a voice so that we may improve our lives.
This requires all Australians We need your help, all Australians, to see the significance at this moment, with this level of unity here, this level of magnanimity, this level of dedication that has taken place amongst us and the government, that we as Australians can arise to a better relationship with our First Peoples.
Australians can be confident that the work has been done to ensure this is a voice that works. A voice that works. A voice that will make practical difference. A voice that will work for you.
Now, history tells us that the best prospect for this referendum success, of course, is to get bipartisan support from the Liberal Party. The Nationals, as you know, already oppose it. Peter Dutton's decision here will be critical with his party room, but he's still delaying, calling for all the government's legal advice and more detail on what the legislated voice would look like, which is fair enough.
I've written to the Prime Minister. I proposed 15 basic questions, pretty common sense questions that Australians are asking, and the Prime Minister hasn't responded with the detail, even to this very day.
Yeah, I think Albo's got to map out on how he would legislate a voice, give people something to base their arguments on, to reassure people. This is tough for Dutton, though. He'll have Liberal MPs breaking ranks on him whichever way he goes on the voice referendum. And if he opposes the voice and it gets up, his political career could be finished. So this is a historic decision. So like all of us, it's best just to put those personal or political questions to one side and just decide on what is right. The clock is ticking for the Liberals now on making that decision, while voters, of course, will have about 6 months or so to consider the debate.
What we've done up to now hasn't worked. If it worked, we wouldn't have closing the gap reports. We can't keep doing the same thing. If you keep doing the same thing, you get the same outcomes.
As you know, I've backed the voice for almost a decade. Before the Uluru Statement, before Labor won office, it's not Labor's idea, so dismiss anyone who says it's Labor's voice. It comes from Indigenous people and from constitutional conservatives. It's about recognising Indigenous Australians in the Constitution in a way that doesn't just fiddle around with symbolism, but actually can deliver practical outcomes. You know, you'll hear all sides of the debate on Chris Kenny tonight. I have great respect for some of the No campaigners like Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price and Warren Mundine, and you'll hear from John Howard later tonight. I think most Australians will think about the good this reform could do, how it would embrace our Indigenous people, not just recognise them in the Constitution, but give them ownership of the solutions they need. It's just a fair go. And then they'll weigh up the risks, which are being talked up by some, but are really minimal to non-existent. Whatever happens, the debate is going to be a lot more real and important from this day on.